So, I mean, I can't believe that Galactus is coming at some point, but,
I hope so.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Side Scheme, a podcast about everybody's favorite superhero card game, Marvel Champions. I am one of your hosts, BananaCrapshoot. Once again, and I think it's been 2 weeks instead of like 6 months like the last break between our podcasts. Exciting episode tonight, and with me, as always, is my somewhat perfectly balanced co-host, Tommy of Titan. Tommy, how are you?
I am super swell. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, you know. Spending a lot of time in the pool when I'm not at work.
Yeah, it's been hot. It's definitely been warm. I've been outside quite a bit myself, too.
Yeah. You get any games in recently? I mean, we'll just jump right into it, right?
Yeah, so we have been expanding. We've been seeing our family through isolation with parents. Can't deny the two grandkids from their grandparents and my in-laws. So we've been doing that, but we had my friend Scott over last night, actually, and we played a couple games. We played 2 games into Heroic One Claw, one with Doomsday Chair and the other with Master of Evil, and they both went poor. Very poor.
Well, I think we have the guy you can blame for that. With us is lead designer for Marvel Champions, Caleb. Caleb, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Not a problem. You got
Our pleasure.
Yeah. So for those of us or those listening that don't know who you are, do you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about you? I imagine everyone listening knows who you are, but just in case.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Caleb Grace, and most people that know me because I'm the only 2-time consecutive Star Trek Ccg World Champ. And for the few other people that have heard of me through FFG, I'm lead developer for Marvel Champions, and I spent the last 8 years working on Lord of the Rings LCG before that.
Wait, is that Star Wars CCG thing? Is that true?
The Star Trek bit? Yeah, it is. Actually, it's kind of fun to bring it up sometimes because it's one of those, like, you know, when you're a big fish in a very small pond, you know, like you're popular in small circles or whatever. I spent a good number of years playing the Star Trek 2nd edition, actually, CCG. And just a great group of guys here in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota that play. And I got pretty heavy into it. So, yeah, 2005 was my first time ever going out to Gen Con. And it was with the with the local guys to go play in the Star Trek World Championships. I ended up taking 2nd place, like my first time out at a World Championship event. It kind of blew me away. I lost to this kid from Germany. It was kind of memorable, right? So then the next year I went back and I won it, and then I went back again the year after that and I won it again. That was I kind of thought that would, like, you know, be the end of it. Like, that's all it would amount to. But then actually, as fate would have it, I ended up applying for this job where it became relevant to put on my resume that I was a 2-time CCG World Champion. It actually came up in my interview.
That's pretty awesome.
So that was pretty cool.
Is that the reason you got the job then?
No, I don't think that was. I don't think that was a deciding factor by any means. But I think it was just relevant in the sense that when you work on card games, you should be proficient at them, right? Like you don't have to be a world championship level to design great games. Like, I think it's actually Eric Lang who has obviously designed a lot of card games and is sort of famously bad at them. I think that's something that he likes to admit and joke about, is that he designs all these games, but he's actually not very good at them. So he's good at designing, maybe less at competing. But I think it just helps to show, like, you understand the ins and outs of what card games are about. You know, you're proficient with them. Like Nate French, actually, he came to FFG after playing the Game of Thrones CCG way back in the day, and he competed at a real high level for that. It was actually, I think, what caught Eric Lang's attention, who was the designer at that time, and he was like, hey, we have a position opening, you should apply for it. So it kind of A can lead B to C, right? Like, it's a factor, that's all.
Tommy, I'm just curious for you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm blown away. I had no idea. I actually have been dabbling with that Star Trek CCG, both 1st and 2nd edition.
Oh yeah,
somewhat recently. Yeah, just on like a whim.
sure. So I strongly recommend the second edition over the first. I'm not trying to hate on the first or anything, but that was one of the original CCGs, right, from like way back in the day. And I like to think of those as like the Wild West days, like where anything went. People would just keep tacking on new rules with every expansion, and people hadn't figured out like cost curves and stuff like that. So first edition is kind of like this glorious mess. It's like it's wonderful with the number of things you can do, but it's ridiculous in terms of balance and broken combos and stuff like that. Like, never mind trying to teach someone else to play it with you. Whereas to this day, I maintain that second edition is one of the most streamlined and elegant CCGs I've ever played.
Yeah, most of my experiences with first edition, Glorious Mess is a great description. I think of it more of like as almost like a board game. It's almost like you accepted, we're going to kind of do this, me and my opponent. So many silver bullets, and it's pretty wild. And there's like 6 decks for each player. It's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But
I did a lot of the Star Wars CCG from Decipher, so I didn't get into first edition as much. I had a buddy that taught me to play it like 1 or 2 times, but he didn't teach me all the rules because he wanted to beat me. So he would just tell me enough to play, and then he'd like just wail on me. It's like, okay. But I got into Star Wars, and they're kind of similar in that respect, that they were like super thematic with all the crazy stuff you could do, right? Like, I loved playing Star Wars because I wanted to like go bounty hunting and like capture Luke, and then bring him back to Cloud City and put him in carbon freeze, and then bring him over to the Death Star to present him to the Emperor. Like, you could do all of those things literally within the game, right? Not at a tournament though. You'd already have lost the game before you got any one of those things done.
I played that too, and that was literally the deck that, as I was like probably 12, I took a Cloud City carbon freezing deck, and I think I won 1 game, and I froze with my dark side. I froze like Han and Jabba's palace.
Yeah,
I won 1 time.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I was gonna ask Tommy if like being good at card games would help his resume at his job, but I know it wouldn't help me at mine.
No. It probably would hurt me at my job, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
All right,
Plus, I'm probably not that.
Before we start diving into some deeper stuff, just wanted to say that the Scheme League Season 3, we don't have a winner yet. We were going to talk about it tonight, but the tiebreaker game hasn't been finished yet, so just a heads up on that. You have any thoughts on that, Tommy?
No, I guess we could say it's Drop It Like It's Hut, and his friend from real life. They're a team in our draft league, and then we also have, I think it's Kennedy Hawk and Americana, are representing Marvel Champions Monthly Podcast. And both teams have Captain America and Captain Marvel represented, and I think they have reverse. I think one team has leadership and is it leadership aggression, and the other team has protection justice.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
So,
that's where we're at there, waiting on the result.
Yep. Tommy, you got any questions for Caleb?
I'm sure I could talk to Caleb all night. I'd have no problem with that. Sure. I
was really hoping he would say, "No, I got nothing. Thanks for being here.
Hey guys,
great to have
Caleb. Appreciate the Star Trek and Star Wars talk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a solid 9 minutes of Star Trek. Then we're out.
Yep.
I mean, I could definitely talk about Star Trek longer if you want. Just ask my old boss. I remember he was driving us to some dinner, and Star Trek came up. We were like in the back seat. He's up front driving, going, "Caleb, you talking about Star Trek again?" Just this really tired voice, like, enough of that already.
I've driven the Gen Con from Philadelphia area, so I know there's been some Star Trek stations on our ride too that have lasted hours. So it's been a mess in the past, especially if you know my buddy Scott, which obviously you don't, but Banana, you can imagine driving for 10+ hours, Scott.
Yeah, it probably feels like you're driving for 15.
Yeah,
if you're not into the conversation.
So I'll lead it off with first question. Caleb, just real casual icebreaker, top 3 villains in just the Marvel universe, period.
In the Marvel Universe, my number one all time is Magneto. I'm a huge fan of the X-Men, and Magneto was vital to that. You know, the heroes are only as good as their villain, and I just thought that the whole ideology difference between Professor X and his X-Men versus like Magneto and his acolytes was perfect. I really love that. Next would probably be Doctor Doom. Like, I was never a huge Fantastic Four person. I got into more recently, but I've always liked Doctor Doom, like since I was a kid, and I discovered the original Secret Wars comic at my local library, and I was just paging through those, and I loved just how audacious that guy is, and the mix of like technology and magic, sorcery. Like, that's a pretty cool combo. Plus, I mean, dude always just talks about himself in the third person, and his last name's Doom, so that just makes for really entertaining reading.
He's got some of the best dialogue in Marvel. Period. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So I actually just reread the more recent Secret Wars. So there's the original Secret Wars, was like the first ever Marvel crossover, and then not that long ago, at least not that long ago for me, was the Jonathan Hickman's big Secret Wars comic, where brought an end to all the multiverses, and Doom was the big power that came out of that, where he appoints himself God Emperor Doom. I'm like, how can you not love a guy who's just like, I will call myself God Emperor Doom, and rule over this planet that I have built.
He's a humble man. I mean,
right.
He's as humble as Drax.
The third one is actually the more variable. Like, I would have to think about it for a minute. I'm sure there's like an obvious choice that it's not coming to me right now. I'm trying to think of like some of my favorite story arcs in that from different comics, and I don't know. I'm gonna throw a Winter Soldier out there right now, just because I really fell in love with Cap after the original Civil War comic, and it was like this huge joy to go back and read the Ed Brubaker run, where they first introduced Winter Soldier, and he's this really mysterious, deadly person. He could go toe to toe with Cap, and then you find out he's actually Bucky, and you're like, oh my gosh, mind blown. So that, just the fact that he was such a dangerous villain, and then so personal to one of my favorite heroes. But really, that third spot's probably interchangeable with a lot of other characters.
It's a good list. I approve. You got my admiration. That's a good list.
Cool.
All right, I got a real hard-hitting question here. If you got a hall pass, right, and you could date an MCU actor and like spend a night with, hanging out, who would it be and why?
Hemsworth. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say Hiddleston, but that's all right.
Oh, wow. It's really hard to say anyone besides Scarlett Johansson, but then I don't know if my wife would approve. She might be a little upset. So I'd probably say for going with like Chris Evans, because I really like his portrayal of Captain America. Like, he seems like a really nice guy in person too, so that'd probably be a lot of fun to chat with him. I really enjoy how well he embodied that character, because I think Cap could have been brought to the big screen as almost like a cartoon character, where he's just silly and patriotic, and just like no one resonates with him because he's too perfect. But the way he brought him to life with real heart, that he really is good. Like, in an interview, I was like, this guy gets it, right? Because he just said, Cap is good for the sake of good. He's like everything you want to be as a man. And I was like, that's it. That's perfect. That's exactly who Cap is. But he's not, a perfect person. So anyway, I really admire his portrayal, and I think he'd be a lot of fun to hang out with.
Well,
if ScarJo wasn't available.
That's a good answer. You take the high road, and you make sure that you're on good terms with the wife. So I'll take Chris Pratt, because I want that I was in. So I got a question. I got another question. We're gonna get on topic here with Marvel Champion. I'm curious. We got some. I'm just going by what we see in the community, and we heard you recently on stream, which you're awesome on the stream, by the way. When you guys do stream.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I told the guys on Facebook that I had to try to be entertaining, because they all said they were going to show up. So I better bring it.
So you referenced Thor and how like you guys thought Thor was like extremely powerful, on par with Doctor Strange. And I actually think Thor's a lot better than he gets credit for. I think he's a little tough to play solo, which I think a lot of people are playing right now, coming to the forefront. But I think Thor's like a really good role player. Like I think of it as like almost like a D&D or like a I don't know, a role playing game. Like you have your role like a tank or DPS or whatever it is. But anyway, my question is, do you guys have like a written tier list for where you think the characters fall, or is it just kind of general in your head, or do you not think about that at all? Do you have like are they all even in your mind, or are there some that kind of like wave up a little bit and some that dip down, or just are specifically better with one aspect? How do you view the current hero pool?
Yeah, I right away I can tell you I don't think that there is a goal to define different power levels and to ascribe different characters to those different power levels. Like I certainly understand why there might be a desire from people within the fan base to want that, because anyone who reads comics knows that like in canon Thor is way more powerful than someone like Hawkeye, right? Like if Hawkeye said, "Hey Thor, let's go around," you just laugh because you're like, "No, you're done." You know, you got a bow and arrow. Dude's gonna call down lightning. Your arrows are gonna bounce off his chest. You know, like that's just silly. But then anyone who's read comics also knows that if a writer wants Hawkeye to get the drop on Thor and do some damage, he will conjure up a reason within comics for why Hawkeye could do that. I mean, Hawkeye killed the Hulk with an adamantium arrow in one comic. You know, he's fired like missile-tipped arrows at Ultron and blown up Ultron. You know, so like these are characters that can take on Thor. You know, so it's like the idea of getting the power levels exactly right is kind of like a waste of time, to be completely honest, because they change within the canon. You know, one day Thor is a god who can sail through space and fight cosmic beings like Silver Surfer or even Galactus, and then the next day he's fighting dudes from like Hydra, you know, and they're getting the drop on him just because that's what the writer needed for that book. So it's less about assigning power levels and getting them just right, and it's honestly more about just trying to capture the feel of the character. That's, for me, that's the biggest thing. Is first of all, because it's a game based on a license that's really popular, and we're trying to make the player feel like they get to be that character. The theme has to be real front and center. So when you're playing Thor, you need to feel like Thor. And then secondly, you know, because it's a game, there's mechanics involved, and if you just make a bunch of heroes with the same mechanics, there's no reason to buy more than just a couple heroes. There's no reason to play more than just a couple heroes. So we want to make sure that each hero mechanically feels unique. And so that's kind of like the two main goals, is to try to do something unique that feels appropriate for that character. So with Thor specifically, you know, we wanted him to feel like, you know, that version of Thor who just loves to fight. You know, he's the Asgardian god of thunder, right? Thunder's loud, it's brash, it's in your face. He calls down lightning. He's not Loki, where he's happy to like play in the shadows and be behind the scenes. Like Thor wants to be front and center. One of the favorite moments of mine from like the Marvel movies is when Thor, in the very first movie, he takes his friends to I forget the name of the Frost Giants planet right now, but he takes them there.
I think
Odenheim, there it is.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not Niflheim, but it's somethingheim. Yeah. And he brings them there, and you can tell he's just spoiling for a fight. And he starts just wailing on these frost giants. He's like, "Is that all you have?" And one just cocks him right across the face, just boom. And he looks at him, he's like, "That's more like it," you know. Like he's like, that's what gets him charged up, is just being in that fight. And so that's what we wanted to bring to the card game. Is like, what's Thor's power? What gets him going? When you engage a minion, he's like, "Let's do it. That's more like it." Now I go from 4 cards to 6. Now I'm ready to party. And anyone who's a big fan of Thor from the comics knows he's a lot more nuanced than that. But that part of him is kind of always there, and that's one of the things I like about writers that respect his character. It's like he's trying to grow and mature, but he still loves to fight, you know? So anyhow, as far as getting the power level exactly right, like that's part of feeling like Thor is feeling powerful, feeling like these minions don't stand a chance. Just give me more minions. You should feel like you always just want, I want more. Let's do it. And I think we accomplished that. And yeah, I'm always sorry to hear if it doesn't resonate for fans, because the truth of the matter is we could have designed Thor 100 different ways, right? So when I describe my idea of Thor, there's probably someone in the audience going, yeah, okay, I could kind of see that, but that's not my idea of Thor. My idea of Thor is more, from the God Bomb storyline, where he's traveling back and forth through time and trying to find out, himself and whether or not he's even worthy anymore, and much more introspective. And you can make a strong case for that. That's legit as well. So when we do these characters, we pretty much have to focus in on, like, just kind of one aspect of that character, or at least a narrower slice of the character than the whole breadth of all their stories.
That was
I could go on. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, that's good, because I feel like I lost the question somewhere in there.
No, I'm soaking it up. I love it. Love it. Theme is way more important than power level of a hero. So, like, in my mind, you're trying to hit, like, every hero is as close as what I got out in power. And the main thing to get is that they all feel like the character embodied. And that's way more important, specifically in a co-op game.
Yeah, I think you are going to find power levels do vary, but it also depends on your play style. Like,
sure,
we announced Hawkeye in the Rise of Red Skull box, and that's a hero I'm really excited for, because his play style is so unique to him. His was like, it practically wrote itself. Like, his whole thing is he's a guy with bow and arrows, unless you're counting like his Ronin years or his Giant Man years, but those are kind of a different thing. But most of the time he's a dude with bow and arrows, and so we built him a kit that's like, here's a bow, here's a quiver, here's 10 different arrows, like, just go to town. And his stats are more in line with, I think, what you'd expect from Hawkeye. He doesn't have like an overabundance of hit points, because he doesn't have like super soldier serum or Iron Man's armor or anything. So at first glance, he probably feels a little bit weaker when compared to someone like Hulk or Thor. He's definitely more fragile. But if you play him right, like, what's important to us is that every character has to feel like you could play against every villain. You know what I mean? Like, if we make Hawkeye so that he's really only good against villains like Rhino or something, well, then that's not a great addition to the card pool. Like, you need to be able to bring Hawkeye against Red Skull and Ultron and have a good time. So yeah, in a sense, you're not going to find a huge difference in power level between all the heroes in the game, because every hero in the game needs to be playable against every scenario in the game, ideally. That's what we're striving for, at any rate.
It's perfect too, because they're like, you can come together and, like, where one hero is weak, another hero might be strong. You can make a team that can cover each other too, which is, in my mind, that's really thematic to, like, I mean, right now we're in an Avenger type season, and that's extremely thematic for that too. It's beautiful. It really is. I love it.
Cool. Thank you.
And I really like Thor. I just want to throw that out there. He's my favorite hero so far.
Yeah, I'm still, like, I don't mean to like have a thing about it. I'm honestly just still a little bit baffled, because it's come up a few times now. It's actually pretty much, it's come up on every thread that I'm, like, tagged in. And so I'm reading comments here and there about, he's supposed to be one of the strongest people in comics, but he's one of the weakest heroes. And I'm just thinking, how? Because someone asked me a question in response to the stream. It was a pretty astute question. I might have misspoke, or maybe the person just didn't hear me correctly, but they were confused, because I said that Thor could have an 8-card hand, and they're like, how is that even possible? His natural hand size is 4, and he can only draw 2. And I just pointed out, like, he can draw 2 on the villain turn. If you draw a minion off the top of if you're dealt a minion card, you flip it over, and you can trigger his response on the villain turn. And then again on your turn, you can play Defender of 9 Realms, or Get Over Here, something like that. Draw another 2. Now you've jumped from 4 to 8. And I was like, what other hero can have 8 cards in hand? Like, Iron Man can have 7, right? If he gets all of his armor out.
You could have Asgard too.
Right. So then you have Asgard and you have 9. And then it was funny, because, like, I haven't looked at his kit in quite a while. So I was answering the question, and I was kind of like refreshing myself. I'm like, oh yeah, not only that, but yeah, Asgard will get you up to 9. And then he also has 2 times God of Thunder. which generates that energy every turn, so you can have 2 free resources. So not only can you have 9 cards in hand, but you already have 2 resources on the table to help you pay for those. Those are 2 less cards you need to discard from your hand to do it. That's incredibly efficient. I was like, just as I was answering the question and refreshing myself on all these cards, I was like, how in the world do people think he's weak? Like, this guy's so good. So I don't know, and I hate to keep going on about it, because I worry the more I talk about, the more people take offense that I'm calling them like bad gamers or something, which I don't mean to do. I'm just honestly confused as to where the frustration comes from. Unless you're just playing them in a scenario like if you just take them out against Rhino for the first time, and that's your only, like, you've only played against Rhino, that's actually kind of a bad matchup, because there's very few minions in that deck, right? I think there's like 4 or 5. There's almost none. So Thor's not really going to shine there, because your odds of drawing a minion are really low. But pit him against someone like Claw with the Masters of Evil in there, or especially Ultron, where you get a drone every turn, and you're going to wreck shop.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
definitely matters with playing. Definitely a big factor. More for Thor than...
I think something else, too, that I noticed is, as I read these threads, and this is an oversimplification, admittedly. I don't mean to paint everybody with a single brushstroke. But I know a lot of players are really concerned about, what is my ability to thwart? Everyone's looking at that, like, one printed thwart as, like, such a hindrance, or Hulk has, none. And they're like, oh, that's terrible. And I think, again, it's like, well, what's your role on the team? Or even if you're playing solo, what's your path to victory? Because both Thor and Hulk, their path to victory is not stalling out and taking forever like Iron Man to build up their board state. They're bringing it to the villain from turn 1, doing some serious damage. So one thing I actually just remembered that plays into that is Thor has 14 starting hit points. 14. That's well above the average of 10. And something that Boggs actually pointed out really early on, I thought it was a really smart observation from Boggs, is we were charting out the 4 aspects at the beginning of the design process, and we were saying, okay, justice is the one that's going to be all about, thwarting and preventing the villain from succeeding at their scheme. But what he noticed early on in testing is that protection was actually much better at doing the job of preventing the villain from scheming than justice was, at least initially. Because if you think about it, the villain really only schemes like when you're in alter ego form. And most players don't switch back to alter ego form until they get low on hit points. So if you're in protection and you're able to defend or mitigate damage, every turn that you stay in hero form, you're also thwarting. You're also thwarting the villain. You're preventing the villain from being able to advance the scheme. And so that's something that Thor can do as well. Like, Thor's not meant to spend a lot of actions thwarting the main scheme. In fact, he really shouldn't spend almost any. Like, that's what Defender of the Nine Realms is for, or Chase Them Down. Those were my favorite turns, when I would Defender of the Nine Realms to get a minion, remove 3 threat, kill that minion with a hammer, hammer throw that destroys the minion and hits the villain, and then I chase them down to remove 2 more threat, and I keep advancing my win condition of tearing into the villain without ever stopping to spend an action on thwarting. So I think that's when I talk about it, depends on how you pilot the character. Like, that's what I'm talking about. He's not the typical, like, Captain America, where you say, okay, this time I'll exhaust to thwart, and then I'll ready him and I'll exhaust to attack, and you switch back and forth. Like, Thor's really only on mission when he's attacking the villain or a minion.
Yeah, preferably a minion, probably, with all the overkill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are really good points.
Well, hopefully they help. If they don't, then I just apologize for carrying on about it, because I think...
No, it's all right. I like playing Thor, so I think he's awesome. I want to kind of go off of what you were saying about theme. How do you go about making sure you nail that theme? Because so far, it feels like you guys have hit perfectly bullseye on the theme for each of these characters so far.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you. I know it is tricky, because it's one of those kind of moving targets, right? Where you're never going to get it just right for everybody. That's just not possible. So I guess one of the things that we do is we try to tap into the public consciousness, sort of like, like I said, there's a lot of different versions of Thor. There's a lot of different versions of Hulk. Captain America has worn different suits and even gone by different names like Nomad. So all of these could be design choices, but I think everyone would agree that if our first Captain America card was a Nomad card, everyone would have just been scratching their heads and going, "What are they up to?"
Yeah.
Because there is this sort of public consciousness of what is like sort of the for lack of a better word, the most generic Thor, the most generic Cap, the one that's most easily recognizable. I guess better than generic would be iconic. What's the most iconic one, right? And ultimately, I think that's what we're going for. And the MCU helps with that. I think that's what makes the MCU such a joy to watch for comic book fans, is that they really do, with each character, sort of pay homage to the most iconic version of that character. And rather than portraying them, as this sort of fringe version of themselves. So, yeah, I think where possible, it's easy to sort of see how people recognize the character in social media. If they've been in the movies, for sure, it's really easy. If they haven't been in the movies, then it's more just kind of looking at the history of their comics and seeing what were the more successful comics, what were the best-selling runs, what were the ones that people keep talking about perennially, and then you get a good sense for, like, this is the part of the character that really stands out that people are going to want to see. So I guess that's where it starts, at least. That's sort of what we zero in on. From there, yeah, it becomes a conversation about actual card game mechanics then, and how do we, like with Cap, and this, I can do this all day. Like, one of the things for me that always set Cap apart, he just never quits, right? Even in the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline, he was like the last man standing. You had all these other, like, more powerful heroes. But then you had Cap at the end, after Thanos had wiped everyone else, and Cap knows he can't win. He still just doesn't back down, So that's sort of where it became, well, he needs to have some kind of mechanics that just says he doesn't quit, that he always gets back up. And then, so it's like, all right, discard a card, you're ready. I'm just pretty straightforward.
Beautiful. And it's like in Endgame, when he, like, tightens down the shield, everybody else is falling. I don't care if I'm going out. I'm out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. As a Cap fan, that moment.
Yep.
That shot that you get, that wide shot right after, where it's like, there's Thanos, there's his entire army, and there's Cap all by himself. Like, that's exactly the feeling you get from reading Marvel Comics. That's exactly how he's portrayed in the books. And so to see that on the big screen was such a treat as a fan.
All right,
sure.
I'm going to take the next one. So this is another, like, design-centric question. I think I asked Bog the same one when he was on, but what do you prefer designing? Like, personally, what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy designing heroes or encounter?
I enjoy them both for different reasons, but I will probably say I enjoy designing the hero kits just a little more. Probably, again, just because those are like my childhood heroes, right? Those are people I grew up with, admiring, and now I get to determine what they look like in this game that I helped design. So that's really exciting. Like, the villains are exciting for all the same reasons, except I didn't grow up admiring the villains as much, and
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really that close. Like, designing new scenarios, I will say it's easier to design scenarios in a sense, because every scenario is pretty much a standalone piece of the game in the sense that there's very rarely any kind of overlap. Like, there's no meta game on the villain side, right? Like, not exactly anyway. Not like there is on the player side. Like, everything you add to the player card pool gets a little trickier. Now, the hero kits are nice because they don't truly go into the pool, but every new hero you do is like a little piece of design space you can't go back to again, or you have to think very carefully about. So there's just more considerations that I think have to go into designing hero cards and player cards, whereas the villains, you can go a little more wild with a little less reservations, because like it's its own thing.
good answer again. I figured it was going to be, you probably enjoyed both, but I didn't know if there was like a certain challenge, one or the other, but I think you articulated that well with the heroes.
Well, thanks. Yeah, they definitely each have their challenges. Like with the scenarios, there is that little bit of overlap again, like with the heroes. Like once you decide to do a gimmick with a villain, that means that you really can't do that gimmick again. Or if you do, you got to figure out how to really implement it, in a different way. So sometimes we have conversations where someone will say like, "Hey, here's a really cool idea. We could do this character this way," and you can immediately recognize that is a cool mechanic, but maybe this isn't the right person for it. Like maybe that would actually fit someone else, like this person over here, that we're not going to get to for a couple of years. But let's assign it to that person now, and then come up with something else for the person we have right in front of us. Those are interesting and sometimes frustrating conversations. I feel a little guilty because it's usually I'm the one who's saying, let's save that for later. And that can always be kind of hard when, like, in the moment, you need something in the moment. You've come up with a great idea, but it hasn't moved you any closer to, checking that box and meeting your deadline.
That sets you up nice for the future. Make your job a little easier later.
Yeah, it was kind of fun doing that with Lord of the Rings. Like, there was things that we actually had planned out years in advance. Actually, so I don't know if you guys play Lord of the Rings at all.
I played for many years.
Yeah.
Big
so
fan
did you ever
of that? And you?
Did you? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think Nate designed a fantastic game. I love that I can say it's my favorite game and not feel like I'm just, patting myself on the back, because it's really his design. And so I took over that game from Lucas. And after I took over the lead developer spot, Lucas was still at the office and still on the LCG team for a long time after that. And so we would brainstorm, and one of the ideas that he had that he was really excited about is he wanted to design the unwinnable scenario. He thought that was such a cool idea, to just be a scenario where the goal is to just survive as long as you can. And so it would come up with every new cycle that I was doing. He's like, "Hey, do you want to do that here? Have you thought about?" And because I agreed, like, that's a really cool idea. But I remember thinking that should be the Black Gate. Like, if we ever design an unwinnable scenario, that should be the Black Gate. And so I think we had that idea in our pocket for like more than 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, it was a long time.
And you sure it wasn't Lake Town? Because I had a hard time with Lake
Town. No, there's certainly scenarios that are hard and feel unbeatable at times, no doubt. But I'm talking about like a legitimate, no way. Yeah.
I'm just messing with
you. Sure. Yeah, Lake Town was actually a freelance design that someone submitted. Like,
oh, wow.
I think someone had actually turned that in before I even started at the company, or maybe it was shortly after. That it was basically someone that Nate knew personally and was really inspired, and kind of came up with this idea of locations that could burn down. That was basically it. Was like they're on fire and they burn down over time, and you kind of have to hurry up and try to explore them before they burn all the way down. Because I remember, he had like the initial design, and then I took it over and just developed it from there.
We spent a lot of time losing that one, but it was so I like losing. Like we started the podcast and mentioned that Scott was here. We played 2 games, Heroic Claw. We lost both games, but I'd rather be challenged, because it makes that time when you beat it, so much sweeter. So I don't want to.
Sure.
I like enjoying that challenge, taking up the difficulty a little bit, even though not that Heroic One Claw is the end all be all of difficulty, but we're gearing up. So,
well, are you guys enjoying Heroic mode then?
I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Good.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you guys.
It was a great solution
right at the beginning of isolation, because it truly has gotten me through a lot of souls.
Awesome.
It's fed our draft league, and it's allowed us to play other scenarios that we felt like we mastered, and suddenly you're back on your heels and you're losing game you previously were walking through, because you had a good handle on what to expect.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because designing a new game it's an interesting challenge, because we kind of know the audience that we think we're designing the game for, right? You never know for sure, but we have this idea of like, It's not a game for kids, but it's a game you can play with your kids, right? Like it needs to be accessible, so we're trying to keep the rules overhead as simple as possible, and the difficulty, we need to tone it down from like Arkham and Lord of the Rings, where it's not oh my gosh, how are we going to win this, but it's more of, hey, watch how we do this. This is going to be so much fun. And then and then it gets out there and it seems to be doing well. Like I don't have the numbers, but the response has been overwhelmingly positive. But then we have that segment of our like diehard fans from Lord of the Rings and Arkham who are like, oh, this is way too easy. Like I already beat expert mode, was like a walk in the park. And you kind of know you're going to get more feedback from that section of your audience than like from the casual gamers, because like I was a casual gamer, or actually, if I'm winning world champions, I suppose I'm not very casual at that point. But I never thought to like post on forums or email, developers to ask questions or give feedback or anything. So I figure, that there's probably a lot of people out there who are happy with the game the way it is, or who already find it too hard, but they're not the kind of people to probably write in very much. And that's just an educated guess. I can't say that I know for sure. But we knew that there was at least a segment of our audience that was enjoying the game, but frustrated that they felt it was too easy. And we wanted to do something about that quickly, which means, we can't fix it with product. Like we can't put out like a new kit or something, because that all takes time and money. Like we have to order new art and put in the dev time. But we wanted to fix it as soon as we could, and so we talked about, some possible solutions that we could do. And ultimately, it was Jeremy Zwirn on the team who was kind of overhearing our conversation, me and Boggs, bouncing ideas back and forth, and he was like, why don't you just reveal an extra card every turn? Like, that'll definitely up the difficulty, and makes it harder to anticipate what the villain's going to do. So you can't just prepare for everything as much. And I really like the elegance of it. And then Boggs was the one who said, well, what if we didn't just stop at one card? What if we made it modular so you could heroic 1 or 2 or 3, go as high as you like, And I thought, why not? Why put a cap on it artificially? So I'm really glad to hear that it's found its audience and that people are enjoying it.
Definitely enjoying.
Yeah, I think the whole system is designed to make it as challenging as you want it to be, and the way you guys are going about doing that, I think, is really smart and really well done.
Cool. One thing I will say was kind of the big surprise or lesson for me was just how popular the modular sets have proven to be.
That was going to be my next question. Was about the modular
it wasn't like I didn't see value in them. It was more just like I expected a few people to be like, oh, that's cool, I'll try swapping them around. And it seems like from the feedback we get that everybody really likes being able to kind of customize their own decks and everything. And so that was something like, by the time a product hits the shelf, we're already pretty far ahead on the next stuff. So it was kind of this thing where, like, once it started coming out and people were giving the feedback, it was like, okay, quick, what can we do with what we have to, like, put more modular sets in? Like, I think I was working on Rise of Red Skull, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start carving more modular sets out of here if I can, and I think we have some exciting stuff, planned for the future, too, to engage with that more still. So what was your question going to be?
It was going to be, did you expect, like, everybody to be into the modular sets like they are?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. Like I trusted Nate's intuition, because I think he really championed that. This idea of like, let's make sure these sets are modular, that you can sort of plug and play, pull them out of this one, put them into that one. So I knew that they had value, but I did not know that people were just going to be all about them the way that they are. That's really exciting.
Not only does it change like the difficulty, but also like the whole thematic experience you have while you're playing, like Rhino with goblin gimmicks, just like picturing that in my head makes me laugh every time.
Oh yeah, Marvel's the perfect place to do that too. So like one thing that was very different about working on Lord of the Rings is I always kind of felt like I had to guard the lore a little bit. Like people would have great ideas to do this or that, but sometimes it'd be like, I just don't know if that's appropriate for Lord of the Rings. Like you can't go as hog wild and still have it feel like Middle Earth. After a while it starts to feel like Harry Potter, where everything goes. It's like, no, you got to be. I'll tread a little more lightly with Lord of the Rings lore, but Marvel, part of what Marvel's DNA is just doing crazy stuff, right? Like, what would Spider-Man be like if he had the power cosmic instead of Silver Surfer? I don't know. Let's write a book and check it out. So you can just do those great. Like, you could honestly see a book like, what would Rhino be like if he stole a Goblin glider? You could imagine that happening in the comics. So I've actually said to people, like, there's nothing we can do in this game that Marvel hasn't already done something crazier in their canon.
True.
Or more
If you read
violent.
Secret Wars back in the day, that there was crazy secret.
Yeah, actually, one of our favorite things to do is like read the background on the characters on the Marvel fandom wiki page, and sometimes just sentences that come out of your mouth as you're reading these out loud, you have to like stop and read it again because you're like, wait, what? That's this dude's story. Like, I know Nate used to just love reading Obadiah Stane's background. The villain from Iron Man, right? The Ironmonger, because he had this thing where it was like his dad got on a winning streak. This is like how the sentence goes. Like, Obadiah Stane, when he was a kid, his dad got on a winning streak, gambling, so he decided to play Russian roulette, and then he accidentally killed himself, and this caused Obadiah Stane to be so depressed that he went bald. Like,
Oh my gosh, that's
like, do yourselves a favor and go to the Marvel wiki and like look this up sometime. It's just,
Did anybody
that's
fact
just-
check that? Or, like,
it's just like one example, and
Holy.
it's great. Yeah, so like that's what I mean. Like, there's so much crazy stuff in Marvel lore already that it really does feel like we can do whatever we want as long as it feels like we're not being disrespectful of the IP. We're not going to do anything to be offensive or try to disparage any characters, but as long as it's all done in good humor and good faith, and Marvel ultimately has to sign off on it, but so far, we haven't had any trouble with that.
They haven't told you to turn around and try again?
No, not yet. I mean, we write stories now for our story boxes, which is really fun. So I think we talked about that in the announcement article for Rise of Red Skull, that we're actually putting comic books like into the rules, which is something I'm really excited for the fans to see, because I think the artists are just doing like a really great job. So it's kind of fun to flip through a rule book and then just have like a 2-page spread that's just Marvel Comics action and story. So it's been like, Marvel's been really good about working with us on that. Like, we pitch our story, we send them all the dialogue, like before we order any art. They get to see, who are the characters, what is the story, what are they saying to each other, and they have a chance to give us any feedback that they want. And so far, they've just been really happy with everything they've seen.
that's cool. That's got to be like a dream come true for you in a Marvel.
Yeah, it is, because I'm like, in a kind of a dime store kind of way. Like, I'm a Marvel writer now, like,
It's awesome.
I'm over here, writing dialogue for Captain America and Red Skull, and that's kind of fun. And hopefully it's not too cheesy when you get to read it, but we are kind of leaning into the cheese a little bit, kind of going for that fun, like sort of Sunday afternoon kind of pulp, like just, we're not going super deep, with those. It's not going to be Civil War or anything like that, right? It's just fun action adventure.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to. I mean, I think everybody is looking forward for multiple reasons. But my next question is actually about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, is the goal for the box? I know there's 5 counters in it. Is the goal for them to almost scale in difficulty as the box goes, or is it just kind of a more of a linear scale?
A little bit it should. Like, I think as a team, we all agreed, just without even having a discussion, it sort of came up naturally that the first scenario in the box is pretty much the intro scenario for that box, so it should never be the most complicated one mechanically, and it should probably be, on average, the easiest one in the box. It's just to get you into it, pardon me, if you're playing campaign mode, it's going to be your first step in the campaign, and so you don't want people grinding through the first scenario trying to win just so they can get onto the second one in the campaign, right? Like it should be one that provides enough challenge that you feel accomplished when you win, but you shouldn't feel like you have to try it again and again and again just to get that win.
Got it.
I had one quick question going back a little bit about the heroic stuff. You guys put out that Heroic 3 challenge with Claw. Has anyone in the FFG office beaten that yet?
I don't know if anyone in the FFG office has tried. I remember Boggs wrote that article and he was like, I kind of just want to throw a challenge in there. I'm like, have at it. Like, so I don't know if he ever played it or not. I know I haven't.
Well, I did, and it was terrible. So you got any tips?
Yeah.
Was he really drunk when he wrote that?
I cannot say. I hope not, because I'm pretty sure he was at the office. Boggs has such a great sense of humor, though. I honest to goodness, I can hear his voice in my head. Like, if you asked him, like, were you drunk when you did that? He'd probably just be like, I can neither confirm nor deny. Or I don't know. It's a long time ago. It's possible. Like, he's so much fun to work with. He does a really great job. And that whole challenge, though, like, that's one of those things where I don't know. Like, I have a hard time sometimes just finding the time that I need to do standard play testing. That I don't really have time to go and test a lot of the fringe stuff. So, I tend to focus on standard and expert. And to be honest, like, it tends to be more standard because I figure, like, once it's challenging enough on standard, it's naturally going to be harder on expert. Like, that's just a matter of numbers. That's not rocket science. If you trade out this villain who has less attack and less hit points for another villain who has more attack and more hit points, you've already made it harder. And then if you throw in, like, if you're going from standard is 1 and 2 to experts 2 and 3, and now you've got additional when revealed effect on 3, like, whatever you add at that point is only going to make it harder. So I would say the bulk of my playtest time is spent on standard, and it's mostly for me with the pre-built decks. We're really trying to make sure that those pre-built decks are a lot of fun to play, like, right out of the pack. So, yeah, that kind of reminds me of the conversation about Thor, because one of the comments I read was like, I wonder if they even play these with the pre-built because it's just awful or whatever. And I was like, man, we spent a lot of time with that pre-built. Like, everybody's having a great time with it. So I'm sorry for that person who had a bad experience. Like, that's obviously not what we were trying to do. But yes, we spend a lot of time with the pre-builds. I ask my remote testers to focus on the custom ones because a lot of my remote testers are those really ambitious gamers who like to tinker and find broken combos and build power decks. And so because I'm reading their feedback and I can tell that they're really delving into it, I feel like my job is more to make sure that that initial experience is good. That for that kid who saves up his allowance and buys the Hulk pack, to make sure that that's a lot of fun to play right out of the box.
I will say it feels like the pre-constructed decks, like each one, it feels like has been like a little more synergistic throughout as they've gone.
That's good.
So I just know you guys are hitting a stride or something.
Too. Yeah, I mean, that's every year that we do this, we should be getting better at it. Like you never want to feel like, oh, look, it's 2020 and I'm good at this, so I'll just keep doing what I did in 2020. Like no one wants to do what they did in 2020 forever. The same is true for game design. Yes.
You want me to? Is it me or you been asking a question?
It's you, man. Go for it.
All right. So I gotta ask about the counter because I'm huge.
About the what? I'm sorry, you cut out for a second.
No problem. The Kang encounter.
Oh yeah.
And that's the first thing being released after the box of Red Skull, Rise of Red Skull, right?
That sounds right. I actually sometimes have a hard time keeping up with the release schedule. That's actually not something I control. I outline it, like when I pitch my vision for the next wave or box or whatever. I'll say, kind of here's the release schedule I'm pitching, but obviously there's things beyond our control, like with the COVID outbreak and delays with production. Like sometimes things get shifted around. So, but I think that's correct. I think that's what they said is it's going to be Rise of Red Skull box, and then the next month will be the Once and Future King.
I'm so hyped because I love weird villains, kind of somewhat obscure villains. But Kang is like just I don't know, time travel. It's a weird mechanic, but the philosophy that you had, splitting up the team and everything, I'm thrilled. Like the segments of time that you'll be in, the hook is amazing. And my question is basically, and I don't even know if you'll be able to answer. Maybe it's not, but between Kang and Wrecking Crew, it really looks like you're taking big swings, big like expansive, like game altering encounter. I don't even know the wording for it to make it proper, but you're basically really reaching with your design space for those encounters. And within the box, is it going to be more of a standard style encounter box, or are there going to be big, wild, ambitious design explorations within that box?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think about like what's in those boxes. Obviously, I can't talk about any boxes beyond Rise of Red Skull.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think because I think ultimately the goal with every scenario we do is to try to find new ground to break. Like, okay, I want to share a little tidbit of wisdom that I learned from Christian Peterson when we were working on Lord of the Rings together. And I think this is back when we were developing the campaign system for Lord of the Rings. And he just shared this thought with me, and I don't know if this is something that he picked up somewhere else or if this is something that he learned from his own experience. But he said, people don't in general really like new things, like things that are truly new. Like they don't like new. What they like is old new, right? Like something that feels familiar, but in a new kind of dressing or with a new twist. And the more I reflect on that, the more I find that to be true. Like when you think about TV shows or games that people get into, it starts with, well, it's kind of like this other thing, right? It always starts with, it's sort of like this, and they compare it to something else they love, and so just being able to connect to that, so you at least have some idea of what you're in for, and then you want to be surprised from there. You want to see how they're going to take that concept that you're already on board with, and then do something new or surprising with it. And I think that's what we're trying to do with our scenarios. There needs to be in every scenario an opportunity for your hero to use their hero powers to attack and to thwart and to feel heroic. So that's always going to be a little bit familiar. But, beyond that, yeah, it's like, what can we do so that you're still doing those things, but it feels different somehow? And that's where, again, I think the theme helps us. Like we get sort of our inspiration from the characters that we choose. So for like Rise of Red Skull, I think we revealed all the villains already. We have Crossbones and Absorbiman and Taskmaster and Zola and Red Skull. And I think out of those, the one that I'm most proud of is Red Skull, because I think his will feel the most different. For me, Red Skull is very much a schemer. He's a dangerous foe for sure. Like he has physical prowess and he has marksmanship in that, but when you think about Red Skull, you're not like, oh my gosh, he's so physically intimidating. It's more like the mental prowess and the plans within plans kind of approach to his scheming. And so, we made for him a separate side scheme deck. That every turn you have to reveal another side scheme, and the more side schemes that are out, the stronger he gets. And so every turn you have to try to figure out, how do I manage these side schemes and keep attacking Red Skull? Where do I find the actions in the cards to let me do that? And so in that sense, you're still attacking and thwarting, but you have this additional challenge. And so that's, yeah, we're definitely looking for ways to expand and do stuff. But one of the advantages for like Once and Future King is that because it's all self-contained, that you can really swing for the fences. Like when you're in a box like Rise of Red Skull, you only have a certain amount of cards that you can commit to each individual scenario because you only have so many cards to work with in the first place, and straight away you're losing half of them to the 2-player decks that are in there, right? So, like just as a studio, we felt it was important to give players not only new scenarios but new heroes to play them with, and so we committed to having 2, and each hero comes with a fully pre-built playable deck right out the start. So you're talking about almost 100 cards right there. So after that, you have to figure out how am I going to make 5 fully playable scenarios and a campaign mode with the cards that are left to me. And so you have to start getting really judicious and smart about your card use. And so to really pull it off means having a lot of modular sets that you can carry between the different scenarios. And so that made the decision to do a Hydra box really easy for starters, because you can just make a couple good Hydra sets, and then you can carry those from scenario to scenario, and even have the one Hydra set in the core box. That was really fun to say, yeah, Madame Hydra can be part of this too. But because the more you have to share cards between the scenarios, I think the less crazy you can get with each scenario. It's not like full stop, like that's the end of it, but it definitely has an impact, if you understand what I mean. Like you have limited card space, limits how carried away you can get with each individual scenario. But in a standalone pack where you have like 78 cards, I think that's what they have. I'm sorry, you shouldn't quote me on that because I haven't looked at the back of those packages in a while. But it's more than 60 anyway, and that's a lot because our average scenario has a deck size, I think, of about 30 to 35. So when you have more than 60 cards, you got a lot of extra room to play with. That's a lot of additional modular sets you can do, or additional main schemes, or versions of the villain. It just gives you a lot of room to play with. And like I said earlier, because scenarios are all kind of standalone and you don't have to worry how they interact with the meta too much, yeah, it's just kind of like the sky's the limit for what you can do. And so I'm glad you guys are picking up on that with Wrecking Crew and Once and Future King and the Goblin scenario. Those are one of the most exciting products for us to work on.
Yeah, I love it. I love how different they are, and I'm really happy that we're getting 6 new encounters all in a row after Hulk, just because we've been playing so much Marvel, and there's been some, obviously the COVID stuff delayed some things. Yep. We've had a run of a lot of heroes, so we definitely are jonesing for more encounters.
For sure, yeah. We're about to, in 2 months there between the Red Skull and King, we'll double the number of playable scenarios in the game.
Our draft league's going to get wild after that.
Yeah, and some of those scenarios too. Like, I think there's a lot of replayability within each of those scenarios. That's something I'm excited about too. Yeah, I feel like I had something else there and I lost it. So, hit me with what you got.
I have a question. What makes a card generate the resource type it generates? Like, is there a scale or like a rubric you use to decide that?
You talking about whether or not it has a mental and energy, physical or a wild?
Yeah.
I'd love to say there was a hard, fast rule, but in truth, I think that would be we'd be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit if we were that strict. I think overall, we've kind of unconsciously found ourselves doing things like, putting more physical resources on like attack cards and more mental resources on thwart cards, or energy on defense cards. Like, I think we found ourselves doing that almost subconsciously. But then there's another step that comes later too, when you're kind of tallying up all the different icons toward the end of the process, and you realize like, oh, this hero has like way more mental resources than anything else and barely any physical, and here, let's trade a couple of those just to balance it out. Like, for the most part, I like to keep it relatively balanced unless there's a good reason not to. So like with Hulk, like one of the things we discussed was like, Hulk's not going to have a balanced set. Hulk's going to be all about that physical resource. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, there's no one hard fast rule. There's a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of that kind of intuition, and then a little bit of just that reality check of like, hey, we need to make sure that in the game overall there's a relative balance, and that means each pack that comes out should have a relative balance.
Interesting. I figured it was probably something like that, but that was a question we got on Facebook.
Sure.
Throw it out there.
Yeah, no, it's a reasonable question. I think that was one of those things, like, I think back to Lord of the Rings when I did the Black Riders box, it came with the 4 hobbits, Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Fatty. And everyone kind of expected Sam was going to be a spirit hero, which makes sense. And I think they were a little surprised that he was leadership. Or they're like, how is Pippin lore? And ultimately it kind of came down to, well, there's 4 spots, there's 4 aspects. I had to put 1 hobbit in each one. And you could really make an argument for almost any of those hobbits being in any of them. So, sometimes it's just the product you're working on almost dictates where certain pieces need to go.
Cool.
So I got a kind of a general question. Just how often do you guys release, for you personally, how often is something released, or your impression X, community Y? And how often does that surprise you? Just in general.
I'm not sure I got the whole question. I'm sorry. Can you ask again?
No problem. So, like, when you guys release a product and you have one expectation, like I know Thor is a good example, and you, like, in your mind, Thor, swinging for tons of damage and is amazing, top tier, and then the community, there's backlash or whatever. Not backlash, but, they're like, oh, he's not as strong as he should be. How often does that happen? How often are you surprised, or is that kind of the rarity? I feel like it's the rarity in general.
Well, I guess Marvel's not really that old of a game to be able to answer that question like with a whole lot of depth. Like I think that really so far of the heroes that we've announced and released, Thor's really the only one, it feels like, who has gotten that kind of feedback. And I really mean what I say when, like, everyone is, their experience, their opinion, it's all valid. Like, I can't tell anyone they're wrong to feel that way, because that's just their experience. And when I hear that, I don't immediately get defensive and go like, well, they're just wrong, and they don't get it, they're stupid. Like, I don't think that. We don't talk about people that way at the office. It's more just like, I'm curious for, like, I wish I could sit down with them when they're playing, and see how they're playing him, and maybe give some feedback and say, oh, now I see why. Like, that actually happened with Miss Marvel. When we were developing Miss Marvel and play testing, I had a friend, a coworker, who was helping out with development, and he was playing Miss Marvel for the first time, and he got really frustrated. His first game, he was like, I just really don't like her. She's not doing anything. Like, I feel like I'm struggling to have any impact where you guys are all like destroying minions and clearing side schemes, and I'm over here just like doing piddly damage. And so I was kind of asking him a couple questions. I was like, well, how often did you switch back to alter ego form? And he's like, maybe once. I was like, oh, dude, I'm sorry, that's it right there. Like, she's really meant to flip back and forth more. Like, if you're not flipping back and forth, then you're pretty much not playing her right. And so he had really good feedback that resulted in something that goes into all of our products now, which is, he said, you should include like a guide that explains that. Like, when you release the hero, have a little strategy tip, a little blurb that says, this is how this character is meant to be played. He's like, because I didn't get that immediately. And this guy's an avid gamer, so if he's not seen it, we're not selling it entirely. We're not making it obvious enough. So, I kind of wish I could be there to offer the same feedback for people who are maybe frustrated with Thor, to say, oh, I get it. You're discarding Defender of the Nine Realms to pay for something else instead of playing Defender of the Nine Realms. Like, you really, every time you draw Defender of the Nine Realms, you want to play that card. You want to take advantage. And, the game, I just don't think has been around long enough for us to really get a full taste of that, different type of feedback.
No, not nearly enough data to have.
I don't think so.
But I mean, you also don't know how many, like, if it's a vocal minority, or, like, you have no idea of gauging, like you said, because there's people that would never reach out on a forum, in any circumstance. So you really have no idea.
I guess I try not to, I definitely don't discount it, even if it's just 1 or 2 people who are writing in. Like, I don't know, I obviously don't have time in my work week or in my personal bandwidth to, address every single fan's concerns. But, I would if I could. Like I really enjoy responding to emails. Sometimes it takes me a long time because I get busy and sometimes I need to talk to Boggs and make sure I'm not forgetting something I've already said or a different ruling, and maybe he's out of the office or I'm on vacation. So sometimes it takes me a while to get back, but I really enjoy having that discourse, and interacting with people that way, because it's almost always results in positive results with people going, oh, okay, I get it now, or that's way better than I thought, or something like that. Like it seems really like a good use of time and a really fun way to build community.
I just want to say you might want to be nice and not tell people that they're playing stuff wrong or that they're stupid, but there's plenty of people in the Facebook group that'll do that for you, so you don't have to.
No, they're definitely not doing it for me. That's not something I endorse.
Well, they do it anyway.
Everyone gets to have their opinion. Yeah, no, I'm not endorsing any messages like that.
Next time I kick someone from the Facebook group.
I will confess that now and then, maybe a personal friend of mine chooses to respond and say something more bluntly than maybe I'm allowed to, and every now and then that kind of feels good, like someone just kind of pointed out, just real cut to the chase. But yeah, no, there's no bad blood. I think people expect me to get angry, when people are like, this card sucks, or what, were they in a hurry when they made this? I don't know. Maybe it's because I played games forever too, and I have those opinions of other games as well. I've definitely experienced that where and a lot of times the biggest disappointment you have, or what really fuels the frustration, is that you're like, this is such a great game. This is such a good game, and I love it so much, and it's such a shame that they just missed the mark in this one area. I really wish this one area had been, really shored up and tightened up, because then the game would be perfect, So I tend to try to keep that in mind. If people are taking the time to go online and share their feelings and their thoughts about it, it means they care enough to do that, that they're passionate enough about the game to join a Facebook group or to get on a Discord server and have those conversations. Even if what they have to say isn't flattering to me and my designs, it still means a lot that they even care enough to share those things.
For sure.
Clearly, you care enough to come on a podcast where only our moms are going to listen to it. So you're not even getting any good marketing. So we appreciate you just taking time to talk to them.
Well, I appreciate your mom's support of Marvel Champions. So
actually, my mom has played 2 games. So I forced her to
for
play
real?
2 games. Her and my dad have played 2 games teamed up. My mom actually used Thor because she loves Hemsworth.
Awesome.
It's I'm using.
That's great. So do you guys know Josh Massey from our organized play team? Have you heard that name?
I've heard the name. I don't think I've ever interacted with him.
Yeah, terrific guy. He's such an encouragement to our team early on in the process, because he was just so excited for what we were doing as we were putting the game together. He caught the vision from the beginning, and he got really excited to play. He got in on the beta step, and so he actually, he played with his mom. He told us, he came back to the office, he's like, I got my mom to play, and she loved it. I was like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a testament to what you were
that was one of those steps. That was one of those steps where we're like, okay, we're on the right track. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to make a game that you can teach to anybody. They don't have to be a gamer to get it, to enjoy it. They can just, just join you for a game and have a good time.
I think you guys definitely did that. My next question is my last one that I have prepared is, do you have any thoughts, or is there going to be any clarification for the definition of you? Because it seems a little murky sometimes.
Yep. Okay, so to answer that question in full, it's you got to get a little history lesson on the process of building the core game. Because people have a right to be a little confused or even a little frustrated, that it isn't real clear. And I've sort of touched on it in other places with some answers to emails that have been shared on different forums, and I even posted directly to a Facebook chat because a friend of mine had posted the question, and I felt like, oh, that's Brady Sadler. I know him. I'll just go ahead and answer for him and join the conversation that way. And so that we chose the word "you" because it's so much warmer than saying like your hero or your identity, which we still sometimes, out of necessity, need to use those terms. But overall, as a team, one of our stated goals was we want you to be the hero. Like in Lord of the Rings, you are not Aragorn, you are not Frodo. You put your whole fellowship out there, and you control Aragorn and Frodo and Boromir and the rest. So there's just a little bit of distance there, whereas Arkham, you really are the investigator, and people really resonated with that. They really liked, that feeling of like, oh, I get to be this character for this adventure. And it was designed to be our RPG, LCG, and so by immersing people in that, really got them invested. And we thought, everybody wants to be a superhero. That's one of the oldest questions in the book. It's like, if you could be a superhero, who would you be? It's like a very personal question to a lot of people. People like to feel strong and powerful, and so we're like, yeah, we want to use that language that makes you feel like you are the hero. But of course, anytime you go with warmer, more accessible language over, cold, calculated, specific language, you are sacrificing a certain amount of clarity. Now, that's not an argument that just like a blanket argument you can use to say, so any confusion is just because of that, and it's all like that's the best we can do. Like, no, I think we can do better, and I think the next rules reference will make it more clear. Like, one of the things we've been talking about since was the process was just so accelerated toward the end, where like I was actually wrapping up the Lord of the Rings, like the ninth cycle, the final cycle for the time being. I was still working on that and trying to finish that up and get it to the table for approvals as Marvel was getting started, right? So and Nate French was in the middle of transitioning from senior card game designer to executive game designer of FFG, because Corey Canizia was stepping down, and so there was this overlap time where before Corey ultimately left the studio, he was training up Nate and helping him to prepare him for the job. So, you kind of had these competing interests. Honestly, Boggs has been the real stable force of Marvel Champions for its entire lifespan. Like, he's really done the lion's share of the work, and a whole lot of the success of the game is owed to him, and just his real steadfast kind of like, I'm here and I'll do what needs to get done. But even at that time, I think there were times that, he felt a little bit lost in the shuffle because, he was the most junior member of the team at that point, so I think sometimes he was looking for Nate or I to give more direction, and we were both distracted with our other things. So it's really kind of awesome the way the game came together in the end, because there were some real challenges during the process that made it hard for all three of us to connect at the same time and make sure that we were all on the same page. And so I think little things didn't get perfected as well as they should have, as often happens in any game that ever gets made. That's probably the number one thing I've learned from working at FFG and working on games, is that there's just no such thing as a perfect game. Like, every game ever has little inconsistencies or incongruities that make it through to the final product. And so one of the advantages of working on a living card game is that we can update it and improve it as we go. And so that's our intention.
Very nice. Good to know.
Great answer.
I'm sure you've gotten like 17 emails a week from like the same three people about it anyway, so.
Well, hopefully my answer is starting to make sense, because that is something like, that the more we talked about it, it was like, I think really what it came down to is you had three different designers, you had three kind of slightly different interpretations of what we all meant when we said you. Like, I remember having conversations about several game elements. I wish I could remember the specific one, because I remember sitting down at one point and talking to Nate and Boggs about this one particular game element in the design process. And the whole time I had thought it worked, one way, and then I talked to them and found out they thought it worked a completely different way. And it's kind of amazing how, even the same sentence, you can almost read it three different ways. So sorry, that's such a vague answer that I can't remember the specific element that it was. But I think that's ultimately what happened to the word you at times, is that I was thinking it meant one thing, and Nate was thinking it meant something slightly different, and maybe Boggs also thought it meant something slightly different. But ultimately, I think we're on the same page now. And the idea is pretty much that you, the word you, is pretty much always going to refer to your hero or your alter ego, unless it has to mean you as the player, right? Unless it seriously cannot mean your hero, your alter ego. Now that's something we're still reviewing. We're still trying to find those weird corner cases where that just doesn't make sense. But overall, I think we found that's really what we were going for, and it really seems to work like 99% of the time. That the word you means your hero. So I did get an email from someone who said, "Oh, I think that's a real bummer because now Hall of Heroes or Interrogation Room, they're not that good anymore." And certainly they're not as flexible as they were when you could mean allies you controlled. But what I wrote back to this particular question was that that's how I always played it in development. The whole time that I was designing Thor and Hall of Heroes, I was playing that I had to beat an enemy with Thor in order to trigger Hall of Heroes, and the same with Interrogation Room. So, yeah, that's kind of the trade-off, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect. I love it.
Yeah. So it just sounds like it'll be working as you kind of intended it to originally.
It is for me, at least. That's what I like to say. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't what everyone on the team thought what was going to mean originally, but at least now Boggs and I are in agreement, and Nate is in the executive role, so if he has an issue with it, he has total authority to talk to us about that. So that's something like we're still like I said, we're still working on that because the new rules reference hasn't gone up yet.
Cool.
All right,
Yeah,
I got
more
one
time?
last question. One last question. This is just a fun, goofy question. It's
Sure.
you are putting together a team of 4 players, of whoever you know. It could be coworkers, family, friends, whoever. It doesn't matter. To go into a Rise of Red Skull campaign, what 3 people are you bringing with you, and what hero and aspect are you playing?
Oh man, that's so hard. I feel like whatever 3 I say, then there's people that feel excluded.
Hey, that was not my intention. I wasn't trying to do like a last pick thing. My bad.
Sure. Tell you what, I'm going to make it easy because I'm going to say the 3 people who I have play tested with the longest, the most frequently, and the ones that I always just really value their feedback, and they're always fun to play with. Like, we always have a good time, win or lose.
Everybody else is crap, right? I mean, no.
And I fully mean to exclude everyone else. If you're not on this list, then you're not nothing. No, I'm just kidding. So when I play test Marvel, I can almost always rely on these 3 guys, and that's Tony Fanchi, who also works at FFG. He was a playtester of mine for a long time before he joined the studio, and he's just a terrific gamer and a terrific guy. So he was the one actually that gave me the feedback about Miss Marvel wasn't obvious like how to play her at first, and so he's really good at spotting things like that. So then another buddy of ours, Ryan Fralick, he does not work at the studio, but he's a long-time friend of mine. He's been playtesting Lord of the Rings with me for years, and he's a huge comic book fan. And so he joined the Marvel team right away, and just like Thor was his favorite forever. Like, he was always playing Thor. Like, every time we'd show up, it'd be like, I got all these heroes to choose. He's just Thor, he wouldn't even ask if anyone else wanted to play him. He'd just pull him over in front of him, like, I'm Thor, And then there's Mike Strunk, who's I don't know if a lot of people will recognize his name, but like a lot of credit is owed to him for playtesting with me almost longer than anyone else. He's just this really, really cool guy. He's just got such an easygoing personality. We play other games together sometimes, particularly Twilight Imperium. And when I say he's easygoing, I mean like one time I maneuvered the game in Twilight Imperium where I was able to capture his homeworld by slipping through a wormhole, to surprise him. And if you've ever played TI, if you don't have your homeworld, you can't do anything. You can't score points. You're just kind of screwed till you get it back. And so lot of people get pretty upset when that happens. He looks at me and he just chuckles and goes, "Cool." It's like, I just love having him around. Like he's just so grounded that it makes it really easy to accept whatever kind of criticisms that he might have about, cards that didn't hit the mark for him. So anyway, these three guys, it's always a pleasure to play test with them. All three of them are the people who have been play testing with me locally for the longest, and obviously Ryan's going to be Thor. Tony and Mike are both going to be whoever I asked them to be, because they're just those kind of guys. And I suppose if I'd only had like 30 seconds to decide, then I'm probably going to be Cap.
Beautiful. That was perfect. Thank you so much. That was great.
Sure. I'm always happy to brag on my testers, because that is like, when I say that I don't get angry from like criticisms, that is true if they're about me. But when people start criticizing my playtesters, like I see people do, and I don't know that they really mean anything by it, but I can't help but be just a little ticked off when I read like, oh, they need to get better testers, or really the testers didn't catch this. It's like, these guys are volunteering. These are family men. These are married men. These are people with kids. These are people working 60 hours at their job, and then they're still finding time to play test with me. Like, they deserve nothing but your praise, because the game that you're commenting on and enjoying would not get made without their help. And so that's where I draw the line. It's like I get a little ticked off when people start saying things about these guys, because like, not only they're my friends, but I mean, they're just hard-working dudes, Like, they're doing the unglamorous stuff of like printing, cutting, sleeving, and then I change the ability, so they have to pull the card back out and like make a note with pen. You know what I mean? Like, they, and they do it all with a great attitude. So everybody owes them thanks. If you play the game, you owe them your thanks, not your criticisms.
Wilson.
Yep. I don't have any other questions. You got anything, Tommy?
You brought up OP. I mean, do you have any input on OP? I know that might be a ways out and no rush on it.
Sure. So organized play is a separate department, and ultimately, they make the decisions. Sort of like, organized play and art. They don't come into our department and say, hey, you guys should design, Captain America to be this way. So we don't go to them and tell them what to do. Now, that said, it is actually a very collaborative, collegiate kind of atmosphere. And I mentioned Josh Massey by name a minute ago, and he's one of the people on the OP team who is helping to develop, organized play for Marvel. And he just reached out to me the other day. Like, they're very interested in our input. It's not a tense relationship by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually, really fun to work with Josh. I'm always happy to get a message from him, or a question, or a meeting set up. And the same is true for all the different departments. It's really great working with our producer and our art director. Like, we have some really talented individuals that most of our players have no idea who they are. And it's kind of a shame, because again, the game just wouldn't get made without them, or it wouldn't get made on time, or it wouldn't get made with beautiful artwork, So I'm always happy to brag on my coworkers as well when I get the chance.
Awesome. Well, everybody, I mean, we all notice and appreciate the hard work that everybody on the team puts in. Obviously, I mean, we make a podcast about it and write articles multiple times a week about this great game. So we appreciate everything you and everybody else at FFG does for Marvel Champions.
Oh, well, thank you for playing and for promoting the game with your, you're volunteering your time too. And so I appreciate that. It really says a lot about how much the game resonates with you, that you want to take time out to do that. And I appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure it's more than just your mom's listening too. So that's cool.
There's like...
Yeah, I have a brother.
Yeah, his brother, his friend Scott. And then I don't have any friends, so nobody. But do you got anything you want to say, Caleb? We'll start wrapping this thing up.
Just thanks for having me on and giving me the chance to talk with you guys. It's always fun to talk about this game that I love, and this IP that's based on that I also love. So just thanks for listening to me ramble.
Loved every minute of it. Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, it was awesome. We appreciate it, and maybe if this wasn't too much of a negative experience for you, you'd come on again sometime.
Oh, I'd be happy to. But You got to get me and Boggs on the same time because I always love, just the banter with him. It's a lot of fun. We'll see. Maybe we can set that up.
That'd be awesome because we had him on before and it was a great time too. So that'd be awesome to have both you guys on.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. We're lucky to have him on the team.
You guys play off each other well too when you're both on. I think you were both on at least one other cast together, Larry.
Yeah, I think we've maybe done 2 together at this point. Because I remember there was one that we sat in the same room at the office to record, and then there was another one. I remember being on my back porch, and he was at home, and we were on. Yeah, it really is fun. Like that's one of the greatest things about working with FFG is honest, and especially the card game team. Like everybody on that team is someone that I enjoy hanging out with. Like it's such a great thing. And the hardest part about working from home right now is just missing out on that atmosphere of being in the room. Like even if we don't work directly on a game line, like I don't work directly on Arkham or Keyforge, but when those conversations are happening around me, there's an opportunity for me to contribute. Sometimes I'll get asked, like particularly Matt and I had a really great work relationship on Lord of the Rings, and so occasionally he'll ask me for a little bit of input on Arkham, and it's just always fun, to just have conversations, a chance to step away from Marvel for just a second and think about a different card game, and then get ideas that I can take back to Marvel. So I'm kind of missing that right now with everybody being, at their own place.
We'll get back there someday. They'll be normal. See.
Yeah, I hope so.
Let's hope.
Yeah, hope so too. I think that'll do it for this one. Thanks again to Caleb for joining us. I am BananaCrapshoot for Tommy Titan. Stay scheming, champions.
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
What's that?
You got to push the red button.
I'm gonna push a button. I don't know. I pushed.
What are you, colorblind?
We got a Star-Lord quote in there at the end. I snuck in.